Alright, the Winter of Woes is off to a pretty menacing start already because this Absorbing Man boss is just super annoying. And here are the nodes to look out for in this boss matchup. The first thing is he is just straight up DOT immune, but not only that, he is immune to every single passive damage source out there. For example, Overseer's burst damage, Dragon Man's corner damage, he is just immune to that straight up. And that makes this fight a lot more challenging because your options are just super limited now, right? Because most characters have some sort of DOT or passive damage output, but for this challenge, you don't have any of that. So it changes things for sure. And there's also no hit mercy and aggression precision. So this means that with no hit mercy, he can crit through block, but with aggression precision, that's going to happen very often. So basically, if he hits your block, it's pretty much game over. So just watch out for that as well. He also has enhanced parry armor break, where whenever you parry, you give him morph charges, right? And at 600 morph charges, he can give you a ton of vulnerabilities, which do a lot of damage to you, right? And also he has buff toggle unstoppable and also brute force, so this gives him an unstoppable buff every couple of seconds. But also there is brute force, so if you don't hit him within 6 seconds, you get degened. So that combination is just also really bad. And yeah, you're gonna see that either you have to have a slow champion for this fight or decelerate as well. Now there's also this one node called Overwrite. That means your damage form is going to switch from physical to energy and vice versa every time it gets knocked down by a heavy attack, I believe, or just knocked down in general. So this can help you sometimes, for example, if he is just spamming SP1 but you have that energy damage up, then you're kind of just chilling, right? But if he has, his energy form and you have that energy damage, then it becomes kind of problematic. But now Absorbing Man's base abilities contribute a ton to this fight, so it's important to know about them, and here are the most important ones to know. At 600 morph charges, he inflicts these really big vulnerabilities that will pretty much one-shot you if you get hit by them, or if he hits you with them up. And yeah, just watch out for that. It's gonna be a mess, right? Even a blocked hit can one-shot you, so it's rough. It's definitely rough. And also his refined Uru form does a ton of damage to you whenever he hits your block, so watch out for that. And you want to just try to deactivate the form as often as possible, but more on that later. And Magma form gives him incinerate passives that he can inflict onto you, and they are very deadly too. Now there's also of course his forms that change his physical and energy resistance. Of course Uru is physical and Magma is energy, so keep that in mind whenever you have a certain damage form up from the override node. And here's the big one, he gains a massive regen whenever he does gain a new form, so this massive regen is going to be a problem, right? So the best options for this fight are heal block characters. That is priority over anything else, because eventually, if he's at very low health, the regen's going to be so massive that pretty much no one can out damage it, right? So keep that in mind, that this Absorbing Man has a ton of regen. And additionally, whenever you heavy attack him after a special attack, if there isn't a cooldown active at the moment, it'll just deactivate his current form, and that also means that the regen goes away too. So the regen and the form go away by doing a heavy attack after his special attack. Keep that in mind for the whole game plan, right? But speaking of the game plan, here is the game plan for this fight. So you want to alternate between his forms to get easier deactivations. For example, bait the SP1, deactivate it, bait the SP2, deactivate it, and then just keep on switching the forms, right? And additionally, with the Unstoppable, you want to time your special attacks, or his special attack, sorry, so he isn't unstoppable during them, right? Because if he is, then you can't heavy attack them safely. But also, I think the best option for this fight is an unstoppable counter, but we'll get to that later. And additionally, you want to use champions with good damage output without any DOT, because he is immune to DOT and you just can't do any damage that way. So you want to have champions with just raw numbers. For example, She-Hulk, but more on that later. And yeah, you want to avoid just using anyone with DOT based damage, because the fight becomes a lot longer and that becomes like more difficult to do, right? Because this fight, it's all about just difficulty over time, because he gets more morph charges over time, he gets more regen over time. So yeah, it's just not a fun time if you use a champion that doesn't have at least decent damage output without any DOT. Now, additionally, one big thing here is a heal block character, and I feel like if the heal block champion needs DOT, it's still worth using them because they have heal block, right? I think heal block is the most important part of this fight because the regen is just so massive, and you just have to try to work around it, right? And last but not least, you want to avoid parrying, because whenever you parry, you give him morph charges, right? And like at 600 morph charges, he just does a ton of damage to you, and it's just really annoying, right? But additionally, I think it's best if you just don't block in general, right? Because with no hit mercy, with like aggression precision, he's going to crit through block a ton, and it's going to be pretty lethal, especially if like he has those vulnerabilities up. So yeah, I think that you want to just not block at all, and that might be tough, right? So this boss is definitely really hard to deal with, but yeah, it takes some strategy and also a lot of getting used to, right? But here are my best options for these objectives. So for Gamma, I think She-Hulk is by far the best option because she has strong non-DOT damage and she also has Petrify, right? So in this video, I'm going to do a She-Hulk solo because that's the one that I found easiest to do. So yeah, I think she is by far the best option for it because of the Petrify too. It is just so valuable for this fight especially. But my other option is Hulk because Hulk just has some good non-DOT damage as well, and he can just block out healing with his debuffs. So yeah, I think Hulk is a great option for sure. And for robots, I have Warlock because Warlock has heal block, right? And the fight's going to be slow. It's going to be very annoying, and I heard that he is actually bugged right now, so you might want to wait on this objective. But for other options, you have Guillotine 2099 because Guillotine has some decent non-DOT damage, but she also does have that Spectre as well, so I think she'll be pretty good for this additionally. So yeah, the robot objective is going to be a slog, right? It's going to be like pretty brutal for sure, but there are at least some options for it for like his healing, right? And additionally, for the Sinister 6 objective, I have Sandman here because I think Sandman is one of the best counter stims straight up because he does have access to heal block with, you know, his ton of debuffs, and he also has slow as well because of his decelerate on the SP2. So yeah, I think that these are the best options for this fight. I think the Sandman one is probably the easiest one besides She-Hulk, and the robot one is going to be just a pain to deal with, right? But now it's time for the solo, and my solo of choice is She-Hulk, so let's just see how this fight goes. So yeah, here we have this rank 4 boosted She-Hulk, and by the way, I think boosting is like one of the best things to do for this fight because Absorbing Man here is not pulling any punches, right? So you shouldn't either. So yeah, for She-Hulk here, you want to just play it slow for a bit, build up your Furies just passively, and once the fight gets going, you want to start dropping your SP2 for that Petrify. And yeah, like besides that, it's a pretty straightforward fight. Every time you can, you should deactivate his forms by the heavy attack, but keep in mind that it is on a cooldown, so you can't do it every single time. So yeah, you might have to deal with some like scary times where like he does have his refined form up. So just keep that in mind that yeah, this fight's gonna be pretty dang scary at times, right? But She-Hulk, she does her best to just try to make it as easy as possible, and I think she is the best option for it because she is just so safe here. The damage output is just really good, and that Petrify is just doing a ton of work as well. So yeah, you want to also just make sure to keep the slow up at all times because the slow, of course, is like the best thing here because of just how easy it is to keep up. But yeah, so far so good here. We're doing some pretty nice damage at this point, and we've got to keep the Petrify up now because the regen is going to get pretty nasty pretty soon. There I kind of mess up, right? But it's fine. We just recovered pretty easily. We got very lucky there for sure, but the fight continues, right? And here he drops another SP1, no big deal. But you can see now that the vulnerabilities are active, so if I take a blocked hit, I'm pretty much just done for, right? So I gotta watch out for that. No more blocking for the rest of the fight, essentially. And yeah, that's when the fight becomes really annoying to deal with, right? Because that mechanic is just super like frustrating, right? Because I have literally been KO'd by one single blocked hit in this matchup. It is crazy stuff, like how much damage he does to you, right? But yeah, the fight's still going pretty well. We have our Furies like building up big time at this point, but keep in mind that this AI is like kind of weird, so sometimes he just like throws a heavy attack out of nowhere, and that can just really like stop your momentum, right, with the Furies. So it's like, it's an RNG fight for sure, because you're not guaranteed to like gain the Furies, and also if he just doesn't play like to your liking, then you'll lose your Furies pretty fast too. So yeah, the fight can be pretty RNG for sure, but I think She-Hulk is still the best option. And that just goes to show that, yeah, the options for this fight, limited is generous, to like say it nicely, right? It's crazy stuff, but yeah, the fight's still going pretty well. She-Hulk is just crushing it at this point. A massive SP2 there. The regen is just being blocked out completely, so we are in a perfect spot. And yeah, this matchup feels as good as over, but then again, this fight can go south like really, really fast, so it's not over till it's over, right? You gotta just keep on playing it safe, which I do in this matchup, because I'm not trying to risk anything at this point. He is down so low, and I don't want to risk it, right? So I drop another SP2, does some pretty massive damage, and yeah, this matchup is just still going really, really well, thankfully, but I'm still pretty nervous here, right? But I think it's now officially done with. Well, not completely yet, but we just drop a combo into the relic hit, and yeah, that just does it. So that was a pretty fun solo. This is like the only fun solo, I want to say, because the Sandman one is just brutal, and the Robots one, I don't even think a solo is possible, but I mean, it probably is, but it's gonna be like really annoying to deal with, right? But yeah, this challenge so far is definitely challenging, and if you want to see a good Sandman solo, check out Simula's channel. Really good guy, and he's like really good with Sandman as well, so yeah, check that out. It's some pretty good stuff. I might link it if I remember, but let me know your thoughts on this challenge so far, and yes, about it for me.